Hello and welcome. We are in Yerushalmi, Berachos, Daf Chaf, and we are following the Oz V'Hadar print. So it's actually Daf Yud Gimel or so in the Vilna print if you're using that from the 1900s. I'm going to do three ha'aras today. First is going to be historical and very relevant. I've promised you a long time, and this is an ongoing discussion about how do you follow the Bavli versus the Yerushalmi, and then we're going to have two ha'aras on the page. Very interesting. And one of them will be a little bit off the page as well for a moment. Okay, so basically, if there's a machlokes between the Bavli, which was written hundreds of years after the Yerushalmi, 200 years or so after, who do you follow? The Yerushalmi was written before, so the Yad Malachi in Chelik Beis Klali Shnei Talmidim number Dalid. So he says from the Beis Yosef and the Bach, probably based on Rashi and Tosas L'chora, that you follow the Bavli. The Bavli wins, and the Makar for this is the Beis Yosef, but also the Rif in Eruvin, obviously quoting a Rishon. The Rif says in Eruvin Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis that basically we paskin like the Bavli, and he says that the reason is because the Bavli authors came later and they knew the opinions of the Yerushalmi, they were familiar with it, and the Knesset Gedolah, Yad Malachi, Stei Chamed, Kalei Poskim, they all bring this down. That basically that's the psak, and that's a general principle that if the Bavli contradicts the Yerushalmi explicitly, we generally follow the Bavli. There are many exceptions to this, but that's the thing. And generally, many of the halachas that we follow the Bavli, like for example, Tanis Bechoros, where it's Iker Chaser V'Na Sefer, where it's not talked about in the Shas Bavli. That's usually we'll follow the Yerushalmi, and usually you'll find people that say that they're ramazim to it in the Yerushalmi, in the Bavli. But again, it's very clear that the people that the ones who set up the Bavli were certainly familiar with Yerushalmi. Some of the pshatim that they explain based on the Rif and just in general is that the Yerushalmi was written during a great time of upheaval, which on the one hand promotes Torah learning, as we know historically, but at the same time, the Gemara itself in Bavli and Sanhedrin says that when there's galus, so people forget their Torah, and it says that the Talmidim weren't mishamish their Rebbeim properly, but it also says that a lot of the cause for that was the upheaval, and that was even in Babylonian times later. But the Yerushalmi itself was written during great upheaval, and therefore the yeshivas were batal, and they eventually moved to Babel in order to stay safe. And so, therefore, the Yerushalmi is not as refined and not as accurate. But there's another part, which is that the Talmud Bavli was written over hundreds of years and had a lot of refinement, including the Rabbanan Salvaroi, who were the ones that came after the Ravina Ravashi sealed the Bavli. So and the Gaonim and their Talmidim all studied it significantly. So it's had a lot of refinement. And you'll find in the Rishonim, especially the family of the Ramban, his Talmud the Rashba, his Talmud the Ritva, and the Ra, you'll find a lot of times that they'll say that this line of the Gemara is from the Savaroi, and that's where they're getting it from. Sefer HaChinuch, which was probably the Ra, I know you could yell at me for that also, but probably Rav Aaron HaKohen, a Rishon, a contemporary of the Ritva, probably a Talmud of the Rashba. So he writes in his introduction that the Bavli was more aruch umavor. It's lengthier and more explanatory than Yerushalmi, and that's why we paskin like it. There is a famous Das Yachid Shita of Rabbi Elazar Kalir who says that everything follows Yerushalmi. There is a lot of discussion about what exactly is meant. Take a look in Tosas and Chagiga, Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, Devar Maskell, Viragli, Ayin Sham. Okay. Let's come back to our page itself. There's a lot to say about other Rishonim and other opinions, and hopefully we'll get to them as well. Okay, so I just want to point out a Das Yachid that you probably would find shocking if you saw it, although there are discussions of this. So at the end of Daf Chaf Amud Beis in the Oz V'Hadar print, it says that Rav Yanai would not put on tefillin for 3 days after he was sick. Obviously, we're talking about a certain severity of sickness, but this is a very interesting thing. So when someone's sick to the point where they can't concentrate and keep a guf nucky, obviously they're putter from tefillin. But a lot of times we think about, how could you not put tefillin on? But the answer is that they had such good concentration, and he felt that his mental faculties were not in place for him to be able to wear tefillin. And this is actually brought down lahalacha by the Mordechai. The Charedim quotes it on the page, but it's brought down in the Mordechai, and also the Beis Yosef in Orachaim, Lamed Ches Sifkat and Aleph talks about it, and you can see the Darkei Moshe there as well. So again, not posketing, but it's just an interesting idea that we often don't think about. Obviously we know that somebody is not able to put on tefillin because they're incapacitated, then they're patur. But this seems to be saying that there was even a madrega of him needing 3 days to kind of calm down and make sure it's there. The Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai is quoted that he always wore tefillin. Maybe that's arguing and saying like a person should put it on no matter what. Again, obviously there are levels where the Kuli Alma, even Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, agrees that if somebody's sick, they're not going to put it on. But maybe he wasn't as strict. But again, we know that tefillin need guf naki, a clean body, and clean mind as well. So it's just an interesting shita that is good to be aware of. Hopefully not relevant for anybody, but just kind of surprising when you see it. There's another interesting Ara. There is a very, very famous Gemara that when a person passes away, if Torah is quoted in his name, so his we know this expression in the Gemara that his mouth sipsosav dovos bekever. So the Gemara here has different quotes, and I'll quote them. And there's an interesting thing. Levi bar Nizira says, I'm not sure where he got his name from. Nizira. Kol Omer Shmuel Mishem Omra. If you quote something. Sifsosav rochashos imo bekever. The lips of the one who said it move in the grave. Ma'atam pasuk says doviv sifsei yeshenim. Okay, so we'll talk about this in 1 second, and then Rav Hanina bar Papa and Rav Simon, they have a machlokas. One of them says that when you quote someone who passed away, kadin de shasi kunditon, it's like someone who drank kunditon, which is wine flavored with honey and pepper. Sounds pretty interesting. I guess it was popular back then. I know people are going to tell me there's wines like that now. And the other one says kadin de shasi chamar atik. It's like you drank aged wine, even though you drank it and it's not in your mouth and you swallowed it, but you still taste it. So what's this machlokas? Is it wine that has kunditon and has honey and pepper, or is it aged wine? So what's the pshat? So I want to pull out the Agadas Eliyahu that I mentioned many times, beautiful sefer, written in the 1700s, and he talks about a lot of that Agadata, many Agadata. If you're ever stuck on something and you really want to get a better understanding, you could take a look. And before I explain his pshat, I want to just go on a quick tangent. Remember that Gemara earlier where the Mishnah said, Amar Lahen Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, Harei Ani Kivin Shana, I'm like 70 years old. And I pointed out this Lahen problem. Why does it say Lahen? In our Mishnayos in the Bavli, it doesn't say Lahen. And then the Gemara says that even though he went to Gedula, he still had a long life. And I pointed out the famous kasha that many of the Mefarshim ask on the page, that was he 18 or was he not? The Yerushalmi seems to be learning that he was actually 70. Arei Ani Kivin Shana, he was actually 70. And the other opinion, the Bavli seems to be holding that he was, we pointed out, was really maybe 17, whatever. But the point is, he actually was younger. But you see Mefarsh that says in the Gemara that he was Marach Yamim. So what's the pshat? So I said different pshatim. So he says a beautiful shot. He says, no, both the Bavli and Yerushalmi agree that he was a child. He was young, and that's the story. And the Bavli agrees with the story. And he said it when he was young. But if he said the words, he was a tzaddik. So Hashem was Mekayim his word. So he had to live that long too. So meaning, in the time when he said it, he actually was only 17 or 18. But since he said already, he had to have a long life. So that's what the Gemara is saying, that you see that he got a long life, even though Rabbana sometimes is Mekatzer Yamav. Ayin Sham. Very interesting Ara. Anyway, so over here he asks, what's the pshat? So I want to just zoom out for 1 second. Meaning, he's bothered. What does that mean that someone's lips speak in the kever? Who cares? What difference does it make? So he brings down from many of the Farshim that when a person passes away, so they are no longer on this world. They can't do mitzvos. The Gemara in Bavli and Sota says that when Moshe davened to Hashem that he wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael, what he wants to eat? No, he wanted to do mitzvos. That's the greatest thing that a person longs for. Everybody knows the famous story of the Gra. He picked up his tzitzis before he passed away and cried. He said for pennies, or for small amount of money nowadays, a person can fulfill mitzvos, but the place that I'm going, the person can't fulfill them anymore. That's the tragedy of losing life, that when a person's not here. So Sosav Dovos Bekever means that his zechus carries on, that normally someone longs for to go back into their body so they can do mitzvos. Here, we actually give them a fulfillment of that. That now, even though he's not here, but we actually bring him back, it's as if he's here. And so why is it his mouth say his body? No. The pshat is, like we mentioned with Rishon Baruch Chai earlier, that the whole purpose of life, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says explicitly, L'amol peh. The whole purpose of life while we're here is for Torah. So that's the Sosav Dovos Bekever, that he could fulfill his life through Torah. which is the way of connecting deeper to Hashem and bringing out His influence in this world. I just want to quote, it's a very famous pshat that, coming back to what's this, is it kunditone, the flavored wine with the honey, or is it the aged wine? Which one is it? So the Carbonite Eda, which we have to talk about, in Shkalim says this pshat, because the Gemara has the same lashon over there, but so Rochashos Bekever. He says a very fascinating distinction. He says, according to the opinion, that it means that it's compared to kunditone, which is a sweet wine, which is superior and spiced. So he says, in order for a Talmud Chacham, in order for a scholar to merit this reward that his mouth talks, even though he's no longer here, he has to have both scholarship to be a Talmud Chacham and also great midos. That's a kunditone, that it smells good and it tastes good. It's a delicious wine. The other opinion says no, it doesn't matter. As long as it's aged wine, it has wisdom to it. Even if he had bad midos, he still gets this reward. It's a fascinating idea to think about, that someone who was a tremendous scholar, but yet, according to the first opinion, he wasn't sweet, he wasn't kind, he doesn't get that merit that his Torah carries on and builds. I'm not sure exactly what that means, because even if someone had bad midos, his Torah still would elevate him in Shemayim. But I guess there's some madriga here of Sososov Dovos Bekever or Rochashos Bekever. By the way, that lashon needs to be explained, of Dovos or Rochashos, which means whispering or moving. But anyway, thank you for joining me, and I hope that your journey in the Yerushalmi is going well, and I hope you find these ideas inspirational. Have a great day.